Think about your morning commute or the price of goods hitting your doorstep. Behind all of those daily realities is a massive network silently dictating the global flow of fuel. Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're going to take a world map and use it to elucidate exactly how OPEC operates. We hear about them in the headlines constantly, but actually visualizing their global footprint, that's exactly what we're going to map out right now.
Here is our agenda for today. We'll be defining OPEC, mapping out the member nations, looking at the massive OPEC Plus expansion, tracing global oil trade flows, and finally, looking at the road ahead.
Section 1. Defining OPEC. So, what exactly is this group? Well, formed back in 1960, OPEC is a permanent intergovernmental organization with a really fascinating dual mandate. It's basically a massive balancing act. They want to ensure fair, profitable prices for the producers, right? But at the exact same time, they need to secure a steady, reliable supply for consumers so the global economy doesn't just grind to a halt.
Looking at their timeline, the evolution is pretty dramatic. In 1960, the focus was just basic natural resource sovereignty. By the 70s, they were taking domestic control and setting up international development funds. Fast forward to the 2000s, they're managing financial crisis responses. And then, wow, 2020 hits. COVID-19 practically stops global travel, oil prices tanked, and OPEC had to coordinate historic, globally unified production adjustments to literally save the market from an absolute freefall.
All right, Section 2, mapping the member nations.
Let's pull up our world map here and start dropping some pins. Starting at the 1960 Baghdad Conference, we anchor our atlas with the 5 founders. In the Middle East, we've got Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia, joining forces across the Atlantic with Venezuela and South America. At the time, this was a massive, audacious move to challenge Western oil companies and take back the steering wheel of their own economies.
Panning our view over to the African continent, the borders on our map expand significantly. We see nations like Algeria, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Libya, and Nigeria all joining the fold to make up the current 12 members. This was highly strategic, guys. It completely shifted OPEC's geographic center of gravity and heavily fortified their collective bargaining power.
And here is a number that absolutely puts things into perspective. 40%. These core 12 member nations command an estimated 35 to 40% of the world's total crude oil supply. Just let that sink in for a second. This relatively small collection of countries pumps out nearly half of the crude the entire planet uses every single day. When they decide to adjust the tap even a tiny bit, the economic ripples hit literally every country on Earth. Moving on to Section 3, the OPEC Plus expansion.
Now, our map didn't stop growing there. In the 2010s, booming U.S. shale production flooded the market and forced a major evolution. Enter the 2016 Declaration of Cooperation. This brought 10 major non-OPEC members to the table, expanding the original 12-member group into an extended alliance of 22 oil-exporting countries known as OPEC+.
Expanding our global atlas again, OPEC Plus stretches from Mexico in the Americas all the way over to Malaysia and Brunei in Asia. To control the global price, they needed a truly global coalition, so we're drawing lines up into Eurasia with Russia, Azerbaijan, and Kazakhstan, dipping back down into Africa with Sudan and South Sudan, and adding more weight in the Middle East with Bahrain and Oman.
But the absolute powerhouse addition to this extended alliance is without a doubt Russia. We're talking about a country that pumped out over 10.3 million barrels a day in 2022, making it the world's third largest oil producer. Bringing a massive river of energy like that into the OPEC Plus fold was a tectonic shift, giving the group incredible leverage over global supply.
Section 4. Global oil trade flows.
To really understand the impact of this map, we have to follow the actual flow of the oil, and India is the perfect case study. Looking at data from April to January 2024, India imported a staggering $84.88 billion worth of crude. But here's the kicker. They aren't just consuming it. They're refining it on a massive scale, shipping out over $70 billion in petroleum exports during that same window. It's a massive central processing hub.
Now, despite complex international sanctions, the data paints a crystal clear picture of where that crude originates. Nearly 46% of India's crude imports come straight from Russia. Add in traditional OPEC heavyweights like Iraq at over 27% and Saudi Arabia at nearly 21%, and you see exactly how deeply intertwined these producing nations are with the world's largest processing centers. once refined, trace the flow right back out across the globe. Europe is the massive primary destination for India's refined exports, absorbing over 26% of it, with the Netherlands alone taking more than 15%. It creates this almost ironic web of global dependency, right? Crude gets pumped from heavily sanctioned areas, washed through massive Indian refineries, and then pumped right back out into consumer markets across Europe, Singapore, the UAE, and the US.
Which brings us to Section 5, the road ahead.
So, where does our global atlas go from here? Well, the borders are constantly shifting. Just recently, Angola withdrew in 2024, while Brazil joined the alliance in February 2025. And perhaps most shockingly, the UAE announced they'll be quitting effective May 1st, 2026. A major player like the UAE stepping away, that is a massive redrawing of the map. It forces OPEC to totally recalibrate its leverage, as member nations constantly weigh their own domestic priorities against the group's collective power.
Plus, the organization is actively trying to position itself in the evolving global climate conversation. They're advocating for a balance, supporting sustainable development while maintaining fossil fuel usage. It's a really critical piece of context that all these member countries are signatories to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, basically walking a very tight tightrope between global environmental targets and the ongoing necessity of the fuel they provide.
As this alliance navigates shifting memberships and the global push for sustainable energy, we have to ask, how will the map of power be redrawn in the next decade of our energy future? Will new alliances form, or will the historical map we've explored today fracture entirely? Thank you for exploring this atlas with us today. To keep diving into the forces shaping our world, be sure to share, like, and subscribe. Catch you next time.